Hey guys, tonight we're taking a truly astonishing, yet profoundly unsettling journey deep into the heart of Imperial China, a civilization famed for its vast empires, its intricate court rituals, and its unparalleled power. But we're not focusing on the grandeur of the Forbidden City or the wisdom of its ministers. Instead, we're pulling back the gilded, dragon-embroidered curtains to uncover how ancient Chinese emperors really lived it sucked. Forget unlimited power, endless luxury, and effortless divinity. You're about to discover a grim reality where the monarch's life was defined by immense, terrifying responsibilities, relentless political intrigue, constant threats, and an almost unbearable burden of maintaining cosmic and earthly order. This wasn't a life of serene leadership, it was a sacred prison, a gilded cage that often led to paranoia, madness, or a swift, violent end. Frankly, you probably wouldn't survive the initial acclamation without longing for a simple, anonymous existence as a common farmer, let alone an entire reign. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me, where in the world are you tuning in from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself suddenly standing in the opulent yet suffocating confines of the Imperial Palace, the Forbidden City in Beijing or Chang'an, Luoyang, depending on the dynasty. Perhaps during the Ming Dynasty 1368-1644 CE, an era of immense imperial power and cultural flourishing. The air is thick with the cloying scent of exotic incense, the rich aroma of rare silks, and the pervasive undercurrent of nervous energy from thousands of courtiers, eunuchs, and palace maids. You are not merely a prince born to royalty. You are the Emperor Huangdi, the Son of Heaven, the supreme ruler of a vast ancient empire. Your life has been one of immense privilege, meticulous education, and constant preparation for this ultimate role. But now, as the dragon robes are draped over your shoulders and the imperial crown placed upon your head, you realize the true, crushing nature of your position. This is the Dragon Throne, and the burden of absolute power is a crushing, isolating responsibility that will define your every moment, transforming your very identity. The very concept of an ancient Chinese emperor was unlike any other kingship in the world. You were not just a ruler, you were considered the Son of Heaven, Tianzi. Tianzi, a divine intermediary between humanity and the celestial realm. Your rule was legitimized by the mandate of heaven, Tianming. Tianming, a sacred trust from the heavens that granted you the right to govern, but also held you personally responsible for the harmony of the cosmos and the well-being of your vast empire. If floods ravaged the land, if famines decimated the population, if plagues swept through cities, or if rebellions erupted, all could be interpreted as signs that you had lost the mandate of heaven, directly reflecting on your piety, your virtue, and your ability to rule. This placed an unimaginable spiritual burden on your shoulders, a relentless pressure to be perfect in every word and deed, knowing that the fate of hundreds of millions and the very order of the universe rested on your divine presence. It truly sucked to literally be God on earth, responsible for the weather, your upbringing. From the moment you were identified as the imperial heir, the crown prince was meticulously designed to prepare you for this divine, yet ultimately human, burden. Your childhood and adolescence were consumed by an incredibly rigorous and comprehensive education, far more demanding than any modern schooling, classical scholarship, You would spend countless hours mastering the Confucian classics texts on philosophy, ethics, governance, and history. You learn to write poetry, practice calligraphy, and appreciate classical arts. This intellectual training was crucial for understanding the principles of good governance and for projecting an image of cultured wisdom. History and administration. You would be schooled in the vast, complex history of China's dynasties, learning from past emperors' successes and failures. You would study the intricacies of imperial bureaucracy, the tax system, legal codes, and the logistics of managing a massive population and a vast civil service. Your viziers and grand secretaries would instruct you daily, absorbing the practicalities of kingship, military arts. As the supreme commander of China's armies, you would receive rigorous training in archery, horsemanship, strategy, and various martial arts. You would study military classics like Sun Tzu's Art of War, preparing you to personally lead armies into battle, though later emperors might delegate this or oversee grand military campaigns. The defense of the vast Chinese borders from nomadic incursions like the Mongols, Jurchens, or Manchus was a perpetual concern, demanding constant vigilance and strategic acumen. Ritual and protocol. Perhaps the most unique aspect of your education, you would spend endless hours memorizing and practicing the thousands of intricate imperial rituals and court protocols. These weren't just social customs, they were believed to be essential for maintaining cosmic harmony, for appeasing the heavens and the ancestors, and for reinforcing your divine legitimacy. Every gesture, every bow, every sacrifice, every pronouncement was meticulously choreographed, reflecting the precise order of the universe. This relentless education was not a choice. It was a non-negotiable part of your destiny. Consuming your childhood and adolescence, every moment was dedicated to forging you into the perfect ruler, physically capable, intellectually astute, morally upright, and ritually pure. You were a living symbol, constantly observed, your every action scrutinized for its divine implications and its impact on the stability of the empire. This pervasive scrutiny and the immense weight of your predetermined destiny meant that your personal desires, your youthful impulses, and any dreams of a normal life were systematically suppressed. Your individuality was erased, replaced by the sacred persona of the emperor, ensuring you were an unblemished conduit for heaven's will. It really sucked to have your childhood replaced by endless lessons about being perfect. The coronation ceremony itself was a deeply symbolic and physically demanding ordeal that cemented your transformation from prince to son of heaven. It was a multi-day event, filled with elaborate rituals, grand processions, solemn sacrifices, and formal pronouncements to heaven and earth. You would perform countless intricate bows, wear heavy, ornate dragon robes, and participate in ancient rites designed to transfer the mandate of heaven to you. This wasn't merely a political inauguration, it was a profound spiritual metamorphosis, a literal embodiment of the divine. Imagine the immense weight of the imperial crown on your head, symbolizing the entirety of the vast empire, and the terrifying realization that your life was now entirely dedicated to maintaining that cosmic and earthly balance. One common misconception is that all ancient Chinese emperors inherited a perfectly stable and prosperous empire and enjoyed effortless rule. In reality, while the ideal of an ordered kingdom was paramount, many emperors inherited empires facing immense challenges, internal rebellions, external military threats from nomadic tribes or rival dynasties, devastating economic crises often due to natural disasters, or profound political instability. Their divine burden often immediately translated into immense practical challenges, forcing them to spend their reigns constantly fighting to maintain order and prosperity against formidable odds. Far from the serene image of absolute, effortless control, the emperor was the supreme authority, but also the supreme problem solver, constantly battling forces that defied easy solutions. Historians still meticulously study Chinese dynastic histories like the Shiji, Hanshu, or veritable records of the Ming-Qing dynasties, imperial edicts, and administrative documents to understand the precise daily routines, political challenges, and personal burdens faced by different emperors, consistently revealing a life far more demanding and stressful than popular imagination suggests. Furthermore, the concept of your divine lineage meant that you were also responsible for the well-being of your ancestors and the continuity of the imperial line. You had to ensure proper care for the imperial ancestral temples, perform meticulous ancestral rites and sacrifices, often involving vast logistical preparations and long, solemn ceremonies, and begin preparations for your own elaborate tomb and afterlife. Even from a young age, this added another layer of constant, long-term responsibility, tying your living existence to the needs of the dead and the future generations, a sacred chain that stretched across millennia. Your past, present, and future were all consumed by your divine role. The immense isolation of your position also contributed to its stressful nature. As emperor, the son of heaven, you were set apart from all mortals, even your closest family, while surrounded by thousands of courtiers, eunuchs, palace maids, and officials. True intimacy or casual companionship was likely rare or even impossible. Every interaction would be governed by strict protocol, your words carefully chosen, and your true feelings often suppressed. This profound loneliness at the pinnacle of power would be a constant psychological burden, transforming your dragon throne into a gilded, solitary confinement. You were the most powerful man in the world, but also the most alone, living in a human bubble of deference and hidden agendas. The precarity of your reign was another terrifying aspect of your absolute power. Chinese imperial history is famously replete with emperors who met violent ends: assassination, forced suicide, deposition, or death in civil wars launched by ambitious rivals or usurpers. The very power you wielded made you the ultimate prize, a constant target for those who coveted your throne. This pervasive threat, this knowledge that your reign could end abruptly and violently at any moment, fostered profound paranoia and anxiety, ensuring that even in moments of triumph, fear lurked just beneath the surface. You were a permanent target, and every moment of your reign was a test of survival against unseen enemies. The psychological toll of carrying such immense burdens would be immense. You would live with perpetual anxiety about the empire's well-being, the loyalty of your ministers, the stability of your court, and the omnipresent threat of assassination. Sleep would be restless, plagued by worries and nightmares. This relentless mental strain, this constant need to be vigilant, to trust no one completely, would erode your peace of mind, leading to profound paranoia, cynicism, or even madness, as exemplified by emperors who descended into tyranny or irrational behavior, fueled by their own fear and isolation. Your existence was a continuous battle against external threats and internal demons, fought at the highest possible stakes, with the entire empire as your personal burden. The very concept of divine adulation, while seemingly elevating, also created an impossible standard. You were expected to be perfect, to be infallible, to embody the very virtues of heaven. Any personal failing, any illness, any military setback, any natural disaster, or any rebellion could be interpreted as a sign of divine displeasure or a personal weakness, undermining your mandate of heaven and your legitimacy. This constant pressure to perform a divine role, even when your mortal body and mind struggled, was a profound and constant source of stress. You were simultaneously worshipped and relentlessly scrutinized, a living paradox of ultimate power and ultimate vulnerability. So, your initiation into the life of an ancient Chinese emperor was not a mere change of title, but a profound and terrifying transformation. The Dragon Throne's immense weight translated into a crushing burden of absolute power, demanding relentless responsibilities for maintaining the vast empire and its cosmic order. This pervasive, unyielding pressure, coupled with the profound isolation, the continuous demanding education, and the constant threat of a violent end, was the first, and perhaps most defining, aspect of how ancient Chinese emperors really lived. It sucked. Having donned the heavy, symbolic robes of power, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was immediately plunged into a perpetual state of confinement and rigid protocol. Forget personal freedom or spontaneous moments. The Forbidden City, your supposed sanctuary, became a gilded prison where your every action, your every word, and your very appearance were meticulously choreographed by ancient tradition, ensuring your job profoundly sucked. Imagine your daily awakening in the Imperial Palace, long before dawn. It was not a private, leisurely affair. Your personal chambers, though vast and opulent, would be filled with numerous attendants eunuchs, palace maids, and imperial physicians, all meticulously prepared to assist you. Your body was not merely your own, it was the sacred vessel of the Son of Heaven, and its preparation was a solemn ritual. You would be bathed, anointed with precious oils and perfumes, often heavy and cloying in the palace air, and dressed in elaborate, often heavy, dragon robes and intricate regalia, the multiple layers of silk, brocade, and embroidery, the weight of the imperial crown and jade pendants, all designed to awe and impress, were in reality cumbersome and stifling. You would endure the physical discomfort of these ceremonial garments for hours during public appearances and rituals, perpetually aware that any personal ease was secondary to the divine image you had to project. It truly sucked to have your morning routine be a full-blown state ceremony. The Forbidden City Zhaijin Cheng itself, while a marvel of architecture and a symbol of your absolute power, was effectively your lifelong prison. Its massive, towering red walls, meticulously guarded gates, and labyrinthine layout were designed to protect the imperial family from external threats, but they also served to completely isolate you from the outside world. Once inside, your access to the city of Beijing, to the common people, or to the natural world beyond the palace grounds was severely restricted, often limited to highly formal processions or specific, controlled visits. You were physically confined, rarely able to experience life beyond the opulent yet stifling walls. It truly sucked to live in a beautiful cage. Your daily routine was a relentless, precisely choreographed dance of ritualistic performance from dawn till dusk. Your every moment was dictated by ancient protocol, meticulously set down in imperial codes and managed by the vast palace bureaucracy of eunuchs and officials. Morning audiences and administration. Your day would begin with early morning audiences with your grand secretaries, grand counselors, and other high-ranking officials. You would receive reports, issue decrees, and make crucial decisions on matters of state, from tax policy and judicial rulings to military deployments and public works projects. Even these administrative acts were often imbued with ritual. Your responses carefully considered to reflect imperial wisdom and divine legitimacy. This required immense focus, sharp intellect, and unwavering concentration. Often performed while seated rigidly on the dragon throne for hours, religious duties and ancestral rites. As emperor, you were the chief priest of the state religion, responsible for countless rituals and sacrifices to heaven, earth, and your ancestors. These were not just private acts of piety, they were often elaborate public spectacles, performed at the Temple of Heaven, the imperial ancestral temple, or within various palace shrines. You would meticulously perform precise movements, chant ancient prayers, and offer sacrifices, believing your flawless execution maintained cosmic harmony, Chen-Ming, and ensured the prosperity of the empire. This constant engagement with sacred rituals was physically demanding, requiring long hours of solemn participation and immense memorization, all while maintaining an unblemished, divine composure. It truly sucked to have your spiritual life be a constant theatrical production. Court ceremonies and imperial functions. You would preside over countless court ceremonies, receiving foreign envoys, attending seasonal festivals, and celebrating imperial milestones. These were elaborate, often lengthy, performances of imperial power, requiring you to maintain a dignified, even impassive, demeanor. Regardless of your personal feelings or discomfort, managing the harem, your duties extended to the inner palace, managing your vast harem of wives, consorts, and concubines. This involved navigating complex hierarchies, mediating rivalries, and ensuring the production of legitimate heirs, a constant source of political and personal stress, which we'll discuss in Chapter 3. Every gesture, every word, every step was precisely dictated by ancient tradition. Your life was a continuous public performance, a constant act of embodying the divine Son of Heaven. There was little room for spontaneity, for personal expression, or for deviation from the millennia-old rituals. Your individuality was systematically suppressed, replaced by the sacred persona of the emperor, ensuring you were an unblemished conduit for heaven's will. This constant need to perform, to embody a perfect, divine image, was emotionally exhausting, leaving you with little true personal life. It really sucked to literally have your life be a perpetual play. The lack of privacy was total. Your chambers would be filled with numerous attendants, eunuchs, palace maids, and often security guards perpetually observing your every move, day and night. You were always on stage, always being watched, ensuring your adherence to ritual purity and divine conduct. True solitude or unguarded moments of personal reflection were incredibly rare, if not impossible. This constant scrutiny, this omnipresent surveillance, as we'll discuss further in Chapter 4 regarding eunuch power, added a pervasive layer of pressure and anxiety to your daily life, making genuine relaxation elusive and fostering profound paranoia. Your personal space was a public stage, and your inner thoughts were your only true sanctuary. The weight of symbolism was immense. Every piece of your regalia, every ritual you performed, was laden with profound meaning. The dragon robes symbolized your imperial authority. The intricate crown represented the unity of your vast empire. The jade pendants and ceremonial scepters reinforced your divine legitimacy. You were a living repository of these symbols, carrying their weight not just physically, but spiritually and psychologically. This constant awareness of your symbolic importance and the dire consequences if you failed to uphold it was a relentless mental burden. One common misconception is that ancient Chinese emperors simply enjoyed absolute power and spent their days in leisure and pleasure. While they commanded immense power and lived in unparalleled luxury, their primary role was that of a supreme ritualistic and administrative figurehead. Much of the practical governance was delegated to a vast bureaucracy of scholar officials and eunuchs, allowing the emperor to focus on his vital religious duties, which were incredibly demanding and time-consuming. The emphasis was on maintaining Chenming and cosmic harmony, a burden that required immense daily effort and strict adherence to thousands of years of tradition. Historians still meticulously study Chinese imperial court records like the veritable records or diaries of activity and repose, which document the emperor's daily life, ritual manuals, and administrative documents to understand the precise daily routines and ritual obligations of different emperors, revealing a life far more demanding and ceremony-bound than popular imagination suggests. Furthermore, the emotional repression demanded by your role was profound. As emperor, you were expected to maintain a stoic, impassive composure, reflecting the unflappable nature of heaven. Displays of anger, fear, sadness, or personal distress were largely forbidden, seen as weaknesses that could undermine your divine authority and thus destabilize the empire. This constant need to present an unblemished, perfect facade, to suppress your genuine human emotions, led to immense internal distress and a profound sense of isolation. You were a living god, but a deeply lonely human being, incapable of truly expressing your inner turmoil, forced to be a perfect mask for your people. The very language you spoke and wrote was imbued with sacred significance. As emperor, your edicts and pronouncements were considered divine commands shaping reality and maintaining cosmic order. This meant every utterance, whether in public decree or seemingly private conversation which might be recorded by accompanying scribes, carried immense weight. This added another layer of constant pressure, forcing you to choose your words meticulously, perpetually aware of their divine implications and their impact on the harmony of the universe. Your speech was not just communication, it was an act of creation and maintenance of cosmic and earthly order. A profound burden that never ceased. The monotony of ritual itself could also be a source of profound stress and boredom, while perhaps comforting in its predictability. Performing the same intricate ceremonies and reciting the same ancient prayers day after day, year after year, for decades, would test your mental resilience. The spiritual focus was constant, but the human experience of endless repetition could lead to mental fatigue and a loss of genuine engagement. Even if your devotion remained absolute, you were a living tradition, a continuity of millennia, but this also meant you were a prisoner of that very tradition, bound by endless rites. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was consumed by a relentless, suffocating regimen of ritual and robes. Every moment, from dawn till dusk, was meticulously choreographed by ancient tradition, demanding unwavering performance, constant vigilance, and profound personal sacrifice. This pervasive, physically demanding, and emotionally repressive existence, ensuring you were a perpetual performer in the grand theater of imperial Chinese religion and statecraft, was a defining, profoundly disturbed and stressful aspect of your job as a living god. Ensuring your life was a continuous act of exhausting public performance within a gilded, yet utterly confining, prison, even as you, the emperor, endured the suffocating regimen of ritual and robes. Your supposed domestic life was consumed by a relentless and terrifying demand-producing male heirs. Forget personal affection or romantic love. Your existence was dominated by dynastic pressure, where the treacherous world of queens and concubines became a constant source of peril and anxiety, making your divine role profoundly sucked. Imagine the immense weight that settled upon you from the moment you ascended the throne. Your primary duty, perhaps even more critical than governing, was to ensure the continuity of the royal lineage, the stability of China, the very cosmic order Chenming. The mandate of heaven was believed to hinge on a clear, legitimate succession. This meant you needed not just children, but male heirs, robust and healthy, to inherit the dragon throne and continue the imperial dynasty. This relentless dynastic burden weighed heavily on your shoulders, transforming your personal life into a matter of state, dictated by a pervasive expectation that your virility was directly linked to the empire's fortune. It truly sucked to have your reproductive organs be a matter of national security. Your most important consort was your Empress Huang Ho. Huang Ho, the primary wife and the symbolic mother of the nation. She was typically a woman of immense status, often chosen for her prestigious family background, political connections, and perceived virtue. Her primary role was to bear you the crown prince. Her importance derived from her potential to produce the legitimate heir, a position of supreme honor but also immense pressure. However, even she was part of a larger, complex, and often treacherous system. Beyond your empress, your palace would be filled with a vast multitude of imperial consorts and concubines, Hogong, Haogong. This extensive harem, sometimes numbering in the hundreds or even thousands, though historical figures vary greatly on actual numbers present at any given time, comprised women chosen for their beauty, their talent, or their family's political influence. Each consort's ultimate goal was to capture your affection and, crucially, to bear you a son. A male heir born from a lesser consort could potentially become a powerful contender for the crown prince position, elevating his mother and her entire clan to immense power and prestige, especially if the empress had not yet produced a son, or if her sons died young. This created a relentless, unspoken, yet fiercely competitive environment. Every night you spent in another consort's chambers, every rumor of a pregnancy, every birth of a male child would send ripples of anxiety, not just through the inner court, but through the powerful political factions attached to each woman. Your personal preferences were constantly scrutinized for their potential to shift dynastic power. It really sucked to have your love life be a breeding competition. Palace intrigue, Gongting Naido. Gongting Naido was rampant and pervasive, a constant threat to your peace of mind and the stability of your court. The women of your harem, often desperate for power and security for themselves and their clans, would engage in ruthless rivalries and insidious plots, spreading rumors and slander, a whispered accusation about a rival consort's character, her piety, her health, her family's ambition, or even a fabricated act of disloyalty could reach your ear, subtly poisoning your opinion. These insidious whispers, carried by eunuchs and palace maids, could subtly influence your own perception of key individuals or factions. Accusations of witchcraft or ill omens if a consort or her family faced misfortune, or if you desired to remove them. Accusations of using black magic against you or other consorts, or of bringing ill omens upon the dynasty, could be leveraged. Such accusations, however baseless, were taken seriously and could lead to severe investigations and brutal punishments. Poison the ultimate. Chilling threat. The history of ancient China, like many imperial courts, is replete with tales of emperors and royal family members meeting their ends through insidious poisonings. Imagine the constant fear, The need for food tasters, changshan, often eunuchs who would sample your food and drink before you consumed it, often dying agonizingly if a plot was successful. But even a taster couldn't guarantee absolute safety, as poisons could be slow-acting, or specifically designed to affect only certain individuals. The psychological burden of this constant vigilance, this daily dance with death where your sustenance itself was a weapon, would be immense. A bitter taste, a sudden, unexplained illness among your staff, or a lingering malaise in your own body would immediately spark horrifying suspicions, turning every meal into a test of survival. It truly sucked to literally eat death for dinner. Constantly. Sabotage or physical harm. Plots could involve more direct, yet still clandestine, violence. A fall down a treacherous staircase, an accident during a hunt, or a seemingly benign illness that rapidly consumed your body could be the work of a hired physician administering a lethal concoction. These attempts would be engineered by those with intimate access to your person, your personal attendants, eunuchs, or even imperial physicians. Trusting anyone implicitly became a dangerous luxury, as the people closest to you also held the greatest opportunity for a quiet, lethal strike. As the pharaoh, you were at the very epicenter of this complex web of ambition and jealousy. Your affections were a fickle sun, capable of elevating a favored consort to immense wealth and influence, or casting her into profound disgrace. Your time and attention would be divided among many women, each desperate for a sign of your favor. You would constantly witness the ebb and flow of power within your harem, knowing that these subtle shifts could have immense political consequences, affecting your stability and the balance of power in your court. The pressure to produce a healthy crown prince was immense. If your empress failed to produce a son, or if your sons died young, while a favored consort had a healthy male child, your reign could become politically unstable. This situation provided immense leverage to rival political factions who wished to see the consort's son elevated, potentially sidelining your empress or even challenging your own authority by questioning your virility or divine favor. The threat of a succession crisis could plunge the entire empire into civil war. And you, the emperor, were held personally responsible for preventing such chaos by ensuring a clear, legitimate heir. It truly sucked to be pressured to make babies for the stability of an entire empire. The case of Empress Lu Ji, wife of Emperor Gaozu of Han, though she was an empress dowager and not a reigning emperor, vividly illustrates the immense power struggles within the imperial household and the ruthlessness involved in securing a succession after Gaozu's death. She consolidated her power as regent for her young son, eliminating rival consorts and their sons, including brutally executing one by turning her into a human swine to secure her own family's influence. While an extreme example, it highlights the pervasive fear and brutal stakes involved in the struggle for succession originating within the imperial harem itself. This common historical fact serves as a stark reminder of the ever-present danger. One common misconception is that all ancient Chinese emperors had vast harems with hundreds of women that were simply for pleasure, while certainly providing pleasure. The primary purpose of the imperial harem was dynastic and political, to produce male heirs, preferably many, to ensure survival given high infant mortality rates, and to forge political alliances with powerful families. The women themselves often came from influential noble families or were foreign princesses sent as diplomatic gifts, further intertwining their lives with court politics and making the harem a highly structured political entity, rather than just a place of indulgence. Historians still meticulously study Chinese imperial court records like the veritable records or biographies of empresses and consorts in dynastic histories, as well as administrative documents detailing harem organization, to understand the precise composition, daily lives, and political function of various emperors' harems, often finding them to be extremely complex and politically charged environments. Furthermore, the very act of sexual intimacy for an emperor was imbued with dynastic and political significance. It was not just about personal pleasure, it was about the sacred act of procreation, ensuring the continuity of the divine bloodline. Your visits to the harem, your interactions with consorts, and your attempts to conceive were all under immense scrutiny. Their success or failure meticulously recorded by eunuchs and widely discussed within the palace. This reduction of personal intimacy to a public dynastic duty added another profound layer of stress and dehumanization to your private life. Turning your most intimate moments into a matter of state, the psychological toll of constantly navigating this treacherous world of ambitious women, scheming factions, and pervasive paranoia would be immense. You would live with a perpetual sense of unease, constantly assessing loyalty, trying to discern truth from slander, and fearing the unseen dagger or poisoned cup. The constant pressure to produce heirs, the anxiety about succession, and the knowledge that your own family members could be plotting against each other for power would erode your peace of mind, leaving you in a state of perpetual vigilance and profound isolation at the pinnacle of your divine rule. You were the king, but also the prime target in a deadly, unending game, and your heart was constantly battling suspicion. The strict regulations and rituals governing harem life, while designed to maintain order, also contributed to its oppressive atmosphere. Women were often confined, their lives meticulously controlled, and rivalries were managed by strict palace rules and the emperor's ultimate authority. However, this suppression of individual freedom often led to festering resentments and desperate schemes, turning the gilded cage of the harem into a simmering cauldron of ambition and potentially deadly intrigue. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was consumed by the relentless demands of producing male heirs. Navigating the treacherous world of queens and concubines, this constant dynastic pressure, coupled with the pervasive palace intrigue, the relentless rivalries among ambitious women, and the terrifying threat of poison or assassination from within your own harem, made your divine role a profoundly disturbing and stressful job, ensuring that even your most private life was a constant battle for stability and survival against the unseen enemies within your own household. Even as you wrestled with the crushing pressure to produce heirs and battled the insidious threats of palace intrigue from your vast harem, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was consumed by an even larger, more relentless threat eunuch power. Forget loyal servants. These were seemingly humble attendants who could wield immense, often corrupt, influence over your court, making your job profoundly sucked. Imagine the vast human apparatus that ran your imperial palace, the Forbidden City. At its heart were the eunuchs, Taijian, castrated males who served the emperor and his imperial household. Their presence was deeply rooted in ancient Chinese tradition, stemming from the need for male servants in the inner palace who posed no threat to the imperial bloodline, as they were physically incapable of fathering children. As emperor, your daily life was utterly reliant on them. They managed your personal chambers, prepared your food, dressed you, served as your personal messengers, guarded your harem, and controlled access to your person. You were constantly surrounded by them. Their soft, high voices, a pervasive soundtrack to your life. It truly sucked to have your closest attendants be castrated men. However, over centuries, the eunuch institution grew into a formidable, often terrifying, political force, while theoretically mere servants. Their unique proximity to the emperor granted them immense, unchecked power. You, the emperor, secluded by ritual and protocol, often found yourself relying heavily on your eunuchs for unfiltered information from the outside world, for advice, and for the daily administration of the vast imperial bureaucracy. This absolute trust, combined with a lack of external oversight from scholar officials who were generally barred from the inner palace, created fertile ground for rampant corruption and abuse of power. Eunuchs could amass immense personal fortunes through various illicit means, controlling access imperial officials desperate to present their petitions, seek promotions, or simply gain your attention, knew they had to go through the eunuchs who controlled access to your person. Powerful eunuchs could delay a meeting, misrepresent a message, or simply deny an audience, effectively cutting off an official from the throne. This power allowed them to demand massive bribes, huilu, and gifts for every petition, every document, and every audience. Imagine your top ministers having to pay off a eunuch just to get 5 minutes of your time. It really sucked to have your closest staff be bribed gatekeepers. Embezzlement and extortion. Eunuchs often managed vast imperial treasuries, granaries, tax revenues, and state workshops. It was easy for unscrupulous eunuchs to skim funds, siphon off goods, inflate costs for imperial projects, or manipulate financial records. With little accountability, the sheer scale of imperial finances made it difficult to detect smaller-scale theft. And even larger embezzlements could be covered up by intimidating lower-ranking officials or manipulating records. They could also extort money from regional officials or local populations, using your name to demand illicit payments, enriching themselves at the expense of the empire and your people. Monopolies and illegal trade. Their unique position within the Forbidden City, with its secure access and connections, allowed some eunuchs to facilitate illegal monopolies or engage in illicit trade of valuable goods, often in defiance of imperial regulations. They could act as intermediaries for forbidden items or deal in luxury goods that were otherwise inaccessible to common merchants. This clandestine network could generate enormous profits, further solidifying their personal fortunes and influence. The political influence of eunuchs could be terrifyingly pervasive. Often eclipsing that of regular scholar officials, they could influence imperial decisions by controlling the flow of information to you, framing reports, or subtly influencing your opinions during private conversations. Powerful eunuchs could sway imperial policy, condemn rivals, or elevate allies. They often whispered counsel in your ear, becoming de facto personal advisors whose influence was difficult for external officials to counter. Control appointments. Eunuchs could influence appointments to crucial government positions, ensuring their loyalists or those who paid them the most filled vital roles, creating vast networks of clientelism that undermined meritocracy and honest governance. Command military forces. In some periods, eunuchs even commanded imperial armies, particularly palace guards or special forces, giving them direct military power that could challenge generals or even the emperor himself. Interfere in succession. In the most extreme cases, powerful eunuch factions could interfere in imperial succession, supporting favored princes or manipulating the process to ensure a compliant heir ascended the throne. The Ming dynasty, in particular, suffered greatly from the unchecked power of eunuchs, leading to widespread corruption and weakening of the empire. Figures like Wang Zhen, Liu Jin, and Wei Zhongqian famously wielded tyrannical power, dominating the court, executing rivals, raising private armies, and amassing colossal fortunes, often making the emperor a mere puppet. Wei Zhongxian, for instance, in the late Ming dynasty, became so powerful that he controlled all appointments and purges, with officials having to kowtow to his statues. This historical fact, the destructive power of eunuch factions, looms large over imperial Chinese history. Your struggle as emperor was to balance your reliance on eunuchs who provided indispensable personal services and security from outside factions with the need to curb their corruption and ambition. This was a perilous tightrope walk. Attempting to suppress powerful eunuch factions could lead to fierce resistance, palace coups, or even your assassination. Ignoring them could lead to widespread corruption, weakened imperial authority, and public discontent. You were constantly trying to manage these internal threats, knowing that your reign's stability often hinged on your ability to control your most intimate servants. It really sucked to be constantly outmaneuvered by your own staff. The psychological toll of living under such a system would be immense. You would live with profound paranoia, constantly questioning the loyalty of your eunuchs, your advisors, and even your closest family. Sleep would be restless, plagued by worries and nightmares of betrayal and assassination. This relentless mental strain, this constant need to be vigilant, to trust no one completely, would erode your peace of mind, leading to profound anxiety, cynicism, or even madness, as exemplified by emperors who descended into tyranny or irrational behavior, fueled by their own fear and isolation. Your life was a continuous battle against unseen enemies within your own palace. Often orchestrated by those you most relied upon, the resentment from scholar officials was constant. The Confucian scholar gentry, who formed the backbone of the civil service and believed in rule by merit and virtue, despised eunuchs, viewing them as uneducated, corrupt, and illegitimate usurpers of power. This created a profound, centuries-long rivalry between eunuch factions and scholar factions, with emperors often caught in the middle, trying to balance these competing forces. The public denunciations of eunuchs in imperial memorials were common, adding to the pressure on you to control them, but also making any support you showed them politically risky. The very physical intimacy eunuchs had with you, while necessary for your daily life, also made them uniquely positioned to spy on you, to interpret your moods, and to manipulate your actions. They saw you at your most vulnerable, unmasked by imperial protocol, and could use this knowledge to their advantage. This profound lack of privacy and the constant observation by your closest attendants added another layer of psychological discomfort and pervasive fear to your daily life. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was profoundly sucked by the pervasive reality of eunuch power. These seemingly humble servants, wielding immense, often corrupt, influence over your court, controlled access to your person, engaged in rampant extortion and embezzlement, and actively participated in treacherous palace intrigues. This constant battle against your own powerful, often venal, staff, transforming your palace into a battleground for unseen power struggles, was a defining, profoundly disturbing, and stressful aspect of your job, ensuring that your absolute authority was perpetually undermined by the very men who served you, even as you, the emperor, battled the pervasive influence of eunuch power and grappled with the insidious threats from your harem. Your imperial reign was consumed by a relentless and often terrifying adversary, court politics. Forget stable governance and loyal ministers. Your daily existence was a high-stakes game of whispers, plots, and purges, making your job profoundly sucked. Imagine your imperial court, supposedly the engine of good governance as a vast, intricate battlefield. It was a complex web of powerful scholar-official factions, Pengdang, ambitious ministers, jealous nobles, and rival princes, all vying for your attention, your favor, and ultimate control over the vast empire. Your position as emperor, while supreme, was often caught in the middle of these ruthless power struggles, with every major policy decision, every appointment, and every family matter becoming a potential flashpoint for conflict. It truly sucked to be the supreme ruler who was also a referee in a never-ending wrestling match. The factionalism within the court was constant and pervasive. Ministers would align themselves into powerful groups based on shared family ties, regional origins, philosophical beliefs, or patronage networks. These factions would relentlessly compete for power, seeking to promote their own members to high office, implement their preferred policies, and, crucially, to undermine and eliminate their rivals. They would present elaborate memorials petitions to you, ostensibly offering wise counsel, but often subtly or overtly criticizing opposing factions or advocating for their own interests. This constant factionalism led to a pervasive atmosphere of whispers and slander. Rivals would spread malicious rumors about each other, accusing opponents of corruption, incompetence, disloyalty, or even treason. These accusations, however baseless, would be meticulously crafted and subtly introduced into your ear by trusted or seemingly trusted eunuchs, palace maids, or even your own consorts. Your duty was to discern truth from falsehood, loyalty from deceit. In a world where everyone had a hidden agenda, imagine constantly having to filter through a flood of gossip and accusations, never knowing whom to truly believe, forever questioning the loyalty of those closest to you. It really sucked to be surrounded by snakes in silk robes. Plots and conspiracies were a chilling reality. Ambitious ministers might conspire to seize control of the bureaucracy, to discredit a powerful eunuch, or even to eliminate a rival prince. These plots were often complex, involving networks of informants, secret meetings, and careful manipulation of imperial policy. You, the emperor, were always a potential target of such schemes, as a sudden assassination or deposition could pave the way for a usurper or a puppet ruler controlled by a triumphant faction. The constant knowledge that your life could be forfeit if a plot succeeded would breed profound paranoia. It truly sucked to fear your own court. The most terrifying manifestation of court politics was purges Dangjeng, when a political faction gained ascendancy or when you decided to crush a rebellious group. The consequences were swift, brutal, and far-reaching. Ministers, officials, and their entire families could be imprisoned and tortured to extract confessions or information about accomplices, banished, stripped of titles and wealth, exiled to remote provinces, effectively condemning them to destitution and obscurity, executed for serious charges of treason or conspiracy. Ministers and their families, including women and children, could face brutal public executions, often by decapitation, strangulation, or even more gruesome methods, serving as a terrifying warning to others. History is replete with examples of powerful ministers and their entire clans being wiped out by imperial purges. Imagine issuing a decree that condemned a family to oblivion. Knowing your decision secured your power, but brought widespread devastation. It truly sucked to have blood on your hands, all the time. Damnatio memoriae. As discussed in the context of pharaohs, their names could be erased from official records, their statues defaced, and their contributions to history systematically vilified. Ensuring their legacy was one of shame and oblivion, the emperor's role in these purges was central. You would preside over the trials, issue the decrees, and ultimately decide the fate of your ministers, while seemingly wielding absolute power. You were also often influenced by the strength of the factions, the counsel of your most trusted advisors, and the political realities of the moment. You had to constantly balance the need to consolidate your power with the risk of creating too many enemies. A complex and morally fraught decision-making process. Every purge, however necessary for your survival, destabilized the court and created new sources of resentment and potential future intrigue. The Ming Dynasty, as discussed in Chapter 4 regarding eunuch power, was particularly notorious for its brutal court politics and purges. The struggles between eunuch factions and scholar official factions led to numerous cycles of repression, torture, and mass executions of ministers, often with the emperor caught in the middle or actively participating in the purges. Figures like the corrupt eunuch Wei Zhongxian or powerful scholar officials like Zhang Zhuzheng wielded immense power, often at the expense of their rivals' lives, directly influencing imperial policy and controlling access to the emperor. This historical fact of pervasive, brutal court politics highlights the immense dangers that surrounded the emperor daily. The psychological toll of living under such a system of perpetual intrigue and violence would be immense. You would live with profound paranoia, constantly questioning the loyalty of every minister, every eunuch, every family member. Sleep would be restless, plagued by worries and nightmares of plots and betrayals. This relentless mental strain, this constant need to be vigilant, to trust no one completely, would erode your peace of mind, leading to profound anxiety, cynicism, or even madness, as exemplified by emperors who descended into tyranny or irrational behavior fueled by their own fear and isolation. Your closest advisors, the very men who governed your empire, could also be your deadliest enemies, ensuring that your reign was a perpetual battle for political survival against unseen forces. It truly sucked to literally be friends with your assassins. The lack of genuine personal connections, as discussed in Chapter 1 and 2, exacerbated this psychological burden. Isolated by your divine status and surrounded by plotters, you had few individuals in whom you could truly confide. This profound loneliness at the pinnacle of power, amplified by the pervasive distrust, made the emotional burden of court politics even heavier, leaving you with little solace or genuine support. One common misconception is that ancient Chinese emperors were infallible, all-powerful figures who always controlled their court. In reality, while the emperor held ultimate authority, the imperial court was a complex web of competing factions, powerful eunuchs, and influential ministers who often exerted immense influence over imperial policy and could even challenge the emperor's will through subtle means, or even outright rebellion. The emperor's ability to truly rule depended heavily on his political astuteness, his ability to balance competing forces, and his capacity to identify and crush threats. Historians still meticulously study Chinese dynastic histories, the veritable records, standard histories, official memorials, and private writings, of scholar officials to understand the precise mechanisms of court politics, the nature of factionalism, and the political struggles that shaped every imperial reign, consistently revealing a turbulent and often violent political landscape. Furthermore, the very rituals of court Chaohui, designed to reinforce your absolute authority, often became arenas for political theater. Ministers would publicly kowtow, but their words and memorials or their subtle alliances would signal their true intentions. You were constantly reading between the lines, interpreting veiled criticisms, and deciphering coded messages in a complex dance of power and deception, adding another layer of mental strain to your daily interactions. Your imperial splendor often masked intense, hidden conflicts. The concept of punishment by family extermination, zuju, a brutal legal practice in Imperial China, further underscored the stakes of court politics. If a high-ranking minister or a member of the imperial family was convicted of treason or a major conspiracy, their entire clan, including distant relatives, could be wiped out, serving as a terrifying deterrent against disloyalty. This meant that the failure of a political plot or the emperor's decision to crush a faction could lead to widespread annihilation, ensuring that the consequences of court politics extended far beyond individual lives. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was profoundly sucked by the pervasive reality of court politics. You battled relentless factionalism, treacherous ministers, and the constant threat of plots, purges, and assassination from within your own palace. This high-stakes, ruthless game of power, transforming your court into a perpetual battlefield of whispers and betrayals, was a defining, profoundly disturbing, and stressful aspect of your job, ensuring that your absolute authority was constantly challenged by the very men who served you. Even as you, the emperor, grappled with the treacherous currents of court politics and the endless machinations of your ministers, your life was perpetually overshadowed by a terrifying, far grander adversary, heaven's mandate. Forget human enemies. Your ultimate burden was the immense, cosmic responsibility for natural disasters like famine and flood, phenomena seen as direct reflections of your reign's virtue and divine displeasure, making your job profoundly sucked. Imagine the immense weight that rested on your shoulders, season after season, year after year, as the son of heaven Tianzi. Tianzi, your rule was legitimized by the mandate of heaven Tianming. Tianming, this wasn't merely a political doctrine, it was a sacred, cosmic contract. You were the crucial link between humanity and the celestial realm, personally responsible for maintaining harmony between heaven, earth, and man. If this harmony was disrupted, heaven would send portents and disasters, reflecting its displeasure, and ultimately signaling that you might have lost your divine right to rule. It truly sucked to be personally responsible for the weather. The most terrifying manifestations of heaven's displeasure were famine and flood, catastrophic natural disasters that could devastate your vast empire. Famine Huang. Zhuang China's immense population was heavily reliant on agriculture, particularly rice and grain production. A prolonged drought, excessive rainfall leading to widespread floods, unseasonal frosts, or devastating locust infestations could destroy crops across vast regions. This would lead to widespread starvation, millions of your people wasting away from hunger, their bodies growing gaunt and weak. You would receive chilling reports from your provincial governors detailing dwindling grain stores, soaring food prices, widespread death, and desperate acts of survival like desperate foraging or even cannibalism, as explored in How You Would Survive a Terrible Famine in the Middle Ages. Imagine the agonizing sight of your people dying by the tens of thousands, their suffering attributed directly to your moral failings or your loss of heaven's favor. The psychological burden of knowing your subjects were starving and that their misery was, in their belief, a direct reflection of your inability to maintain cosmic harmony, would be immense and soul-crushing. It truly sucked to literally watch your people starve and be blamed for it. Flood Hongshui. Hongshui, China was also plagued by immense and often devastating floods, particularly along the mighty Yellow River and Yangtze River. which could burst their banks, inundating vast cultivated fields, destroying homes and entire villages, drowning livestock, and claiming countless lives, while floods sometimes brought fertile silt. An uncontrolled, destructive flood was a clear sign of heaven's fury, a direct indictment of your reign. You would be responsible for organizing massive relief efforts, distributing meager food aid, providing shelter for the displaced, and mobilizing colossal labor forces for reconstruction of dikes and irrigation systems. The devastation would be widespread, wiping out the very agricultural base that sustained your empire, ensuring future famine and hardship. Imagine surveying your flooded lands, seeing the destruction, knowing that too much water could be just as deadly as too little, and that this catastrophe was a cosmic judgment on your rule. It truly sucked to be blamed for too much rain. Your sacred duty involved constantly monitoring these threats. Imperial astronomers would track celestial alignments, diviners would interpret omens, and officials would submit detailed reports on harvests, rainfall, and river levels. Every unusual natural phenomenon, every fluctuation in the weather, every local disaster would be meticulously analyzed for signs of heaven's mood. The anxiety leading up to a crucial harvest, the desperate hope for favorable weather, and the grim tally of casualties from a disaster would be a pervasive annual source of immense stress. Your very legitimacy was constantly on the line. The rituals and ceremonies surrounding these natural phenomena were therefore paramount, consuming a significant portion of your ritualistic duties. As discussed in Chapter 2, you would personally preside over elaborate prayers to heaven, perform solemn sacrifices at the altar of heaven, and lead public rituals to appease angry deities or ancestral spirits who might be causing the calamities. Your precise performance of these rituals was believed to directly influence cosmic harmony, reinforcing your divine responsibility for the empire's well-being. This meant that the failure of the harvest or a devastating flood was not just an agricultural or environmental disaster. It was a profound, personal, and divine failing on your part, a deep blot on your sacred legacy and a potential threat to your mandate of heaven. Political ramifications of these disasters were immediate and profound. Widespread suffering from famine or flood could lead to rebellions, Nongmin Qi, a starving populace, believing you had lost the mandate of heaven, could easily rise in rebellion, challenging your rule and plunging the empire into civil war, peasant uprisings, often fueled by desperate hunger, were a recurring nightmare for Chinese emperors. Loss of legitimacy, your authority rested on your perceived connection to heaven. If disasters mounted during your reign, and you failed to alleviate suffering effectively, scholars, officials, and the populace could openly question your mandate, lending legitimacy to ambitious rivals or usurpers. Erosion of popular support, the suffering of your people, however unavoidable, would inevitably erode their trust and loyalty. While their initial reaction might be despair, it could quickly turn to resentment against a ruler perceived as failing to secure heaven's favor. The psychological toll of constantly living under the shadow of famine and flood would be immense. You would spend every year watching the skies, waiting for the rains, and monitoring the rivers, knowing that the suffering of hundreds of millions of your subjects rested on these unpredictable natural cycles. The despair of a failed harvest, the cries of your starving people, the sight of decimated fields or flooded villages, these would be a constant, agonizing burden, eroding your peace of mind and reminding you of your fundamental, yet ultimately limited, control over the forces of nature. Your divine aura had to mask profound human anxiety. It truly sucked to be perpetually worried about Mother Nature. One common misconception is that the concept of the mandate of heaven was simply a justification for a ruler's absolute power. In reality, it was also a crucial mechanism for accountability, acting as a check on imperial power. While it gave the emperor immense authority, it also implied that his rule was conditional if he failed to govern justly, or if natural disasters seen as signs of his moral failing accumulated. The people had the right to rebel and replace him. This unique blend of divine right and conditional legitimacy meant the emperor was under constant pressure to prove his worthiness, not just to his people, but to heaven itself. Historians still meticulously study Chinese classical texts like the Shujing, or Book of Documents, which first articulate the mandate of heaven, imperial edicts concerning disasters, and court records detailing debates about natural phenomena to understand the precise theological and political implications of heaven's mandate and its immense burden on emperors. Furthermore, the vastness of the Chinese Empire exacerbated these problems. A famine or flood in one province could quickly spread its effects across vast distances, leading to internal migration, increased banditry, and widespread social chaos. Your ability to respond effectively was limited by communication delays, logistical challenges in transporting massive amounts of food and aid, and the sheer scale of the population affected. This very vastness, which defined your power, also magnified your vulnerability to forces that defied your control, turning every natural disaster into an imperial crisis that tested your very ability to govern. The moralistic interpretation of natural events also meant that your personal virtue and behavior were constantly linked to these disasters. If a famine occurred, Confucian ministers might openly or subtly critique your conduct, suggesting your lack of piety or your indulgence had offended heaven. This direct link between your personal life and cosmic events added another layer of constant scrutiny and psychological burden, ensuring that every perceived moral failing could have devastating, empire-wide consequences. The constant need to manage these crises, to coordinate vast relief efforts, and to suppress the inevitable unrest would consume immense amounts of your time and energy. You were not just a symbolic figure, you were the ultimate disaster manager, constantly battling forces that defied easy solutions. Often at immense personal and political cost, your reign was a continuous series of high-stakes interventions, driven by the ever-present threat of cosmic judgment. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was profoundly sucked by the terrifying burden of heaven's mandate, which made you personally responsible for famine and flood and every other natural disaster. These catastrophic events were seen as direct reflections of your reign's virtue and divine displeasure, presenting a constant threat to your legitimacy, your people's well-being, and the stability of your empire. This pervasive burden of cosmic responsibility over forces ultimately beyond your control was a defining and inescapable aspect of your job, ensuring that your reign was a constant, anxious dance with the unpredictable and often lethal whims of nature, even as you, the emperor, grappled with the terrifying burdens of famine and plague and the immense responsibilities of heaven's mandate. Your reign was consumed by another relentless and often soul-crushing responsibility, building for eternity. Forget personal leisure or modest monuments. Your divine obsession with constructing colossal temples and tombs for your own afterlife came at an immense human cost, making your job profoundly sucked. Imagine the sheer scale of your monumental ambition. As emperor, you were not just a ruler for your lifetime, you were building for eternity. ensuring your immortal presence in the cosmos and guaranteeing your successful rebirth and continued power in the afterlife. This meant a lifelong commitment to constructing colossal palaces, imperial cities, temples, and elaborate tombs for yourself, your ancestors, and the gods. These weren't just buildings, they were cosmic machines designed to ensure your eternal prosperity, the continuity of your dynasty, and the maintenance of Qianming. Your reign was measured not just by peace or war, but by the size, number, and grandeur of the monumental structures you left behind. Reflecting your virtue and your divine favor, it truly sucked to be judged by the size of your tomb. The construction of these monumental projects demanded an immense, perpetual labor force, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, of individuals over centuries were conscripted, coerced, or enslaved to work on these sites. Your grand vision translated directly into the back-breaking toil of countless commoners. Imagine the scene at a quarry, thousands of laborers hacking out colossal blocks of stone under the scorching sun, their bodies glistening with sweat, their muscles straining with every swing of a crude tool. Or at a construction site for a palace wall, thousands more hauling immense weights of earth, wood, or stone, pulling ropes, pushing levers, and constructing massive ramps. This was a human machine, powered by sheer force and desperation, often without proper safety measures. It truly sucked to be built on the backs of so many suffering people. The human cost of this monumental obsession was staggering and often brutal, leading to widespread suffering and death. Forced labor yaoyi. The vast majority were conscripted peasants, compelled to work for months or years as a form of tax or civic duty, torn from their families and farms. Others were prisoners of war, condemned criminals, or slaves, bound to a life of endless, often fatal toil. They were seen as disposable resources, their lives utterly secondary to the emperor's will. Physical exertion. The work was physically destructive, involving immense strength for quarrying, hauling, lifting, and meticulously shaping and placing colossal stones or packing vast amounts of rammed earth. This led to chronic pain, permanent injuries, and premature exhaustion. Extreme conditions. Laborers worked in scorching quarries, stifling underground tunnels for tomb complexes or muddy construction sites, exposed to heat stroke, dehydration, and exhaustion in summer, and cold and damp in winter. They worked regardless of the weather, driven by the whip of overseers, disease, and malnutrition. Overcrowded, unsanitary labor camps were breeding grounds for dysentery, typhoid, and various fevers, which swept through the ranks, claiming thousands of lives. Rations were often meager and contaminated, leading to chronic malnutrition that weakened bodies and compromised immune systems. Brutal discipline. Overseers, often former soldiers or ruthless officials, armed with whips and cudgels, enforced relentless productivity, punishing any perceived slowness, error, or defiance with agonizing physical beatings. Executions for escape attempts or insubordination were not uncommon. Accidents, falls from immense scaffolding, crushing injuries from falling blocks of stone or collapsing earth, and injuries from crude tools were daily occurrences, without modern safety equipment or medical care. Such accidents often led to immediate death or slow, agonizing demise from infection. Imagine receiving reports from your viziers detailing the progress of a new temple or your own mausoleum. They would speak of cubic meters of stone laid, of progress on a new causeway, of the hundreds of thousands of laborers involved, and perhaps subtly, of the high mortality rates. You would understand, implicitly, the immense human suffering behind those numbers, the silent cost paid in sweat, blood, and countless anonymous lives, your divine glory was, in a very real sense, literally forged from the misery of your subjects. It really sucked to build your heaven on someone else's hell. Your role as pharaoh wasn't just to decree these projects, it was to personally oversee and inspire them. You would visit the construction sites, inspecting the work, consulting with architects and engineers, and perhaps even symbolically laying the first stone or offering a prayer. These visits were meant to inspire awe and devotion, reinforcing your divine connection to the project. However, they also meant confronting the raw, physical reality of the human cost, a grim counterpoint to your grand vision. The contrast between your silken robes and the emaciated bodies of the laborers would be stark, a constant reminder of the human price of your ambition. The time commitment to these projects was lifelong. From the moment you ascended the throne, preparations for your own elaborate tomb and mortuary temple would begin. Consuming immense resources and constant attention, you would be meticulously planning your eternal resting place, selecting materials, commissioning artisans, and ensuring every detail contributed to your successful afterlife. This meant a significant portion of your mental and administrative energy was constantly directed towards your own post-mortem arrangements. A profound and morbid, lifelong obsession, your past, present, and future were all consumed by this divine obligation. One common misconception is that all ancient Chinese monumental building projects, especially those for emperors, were built entirely by slaves. While slaves and condemned criminals certainly formed a large part of the workforce, e.g., for Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum and the Great Wall, a significant portion of the labor force for major construction projects like the Grand Canal, imperial palaces, or major tombs in later dynasties were often conscripted free peasants performing corvée forced labor as a form of tax or civic duty. They were often housed in organized, though still basic, camps and received rations. However, whether slave or free, the conditions were undeniably brutal and the labor was forced. Highlighting the immense human cost regardless of legal status, historians still meticulously study Chinese dynastic histories. Administrative records like those detailing workers' rosters and rations, and archaeological findings of workers' villages and burial sites to understand the precise composition and conditions of the labor force for various monumental projects, consistently revealing the pervasive, large-scale, and often brutal nature of forced labor. Furthermore, the psychological burden of building your own eternal dwelling, knowing that it would eventually be your tomb, would be immense. You were constantly contemplating your own death and afterlife, ensuring its perfection, this lifelong preoccupation with mortality, however grand, would subtly permeate your consciousness, making your reign a continuous preparation for your own demise. You built a monument to your immortality, but it was also a constant, chilling reminder of your inevitable mortality, making your daily life a profound, ongoing contemplation of death. The irony of constructing your own magnificent cage, one that you could never truly escape, was a grim feature of your life. The scale of raw materials required was astounding. Millions of tons of stone, earth, timber, and other resources were quarried, transported, and meticulously shaped. Imagine the planning, the logistics, the sheer human effort required to move colossal stone blocks, weighing hundreds of tons, for hundreds of miles, often using only brute force, ropes, and sledges. This logistical nightmare and its associated human cost were an integral part of your building legacy, shaping your economic policies and draining your treasury. The very success of your building projects was often used as propaganda, visually demonstrating your divine authority and your mandate of heaven. A pharaoh or emperor who left behind numerous grand temples and a magnificent tomb was seen as having immense divine favor, ensuring prosperity for Egypt or China. This public expectation for monumental construction added another layer of constant pressure, pushing you to undertake increasingly ambitious projects. Regardless of the toll on your human labor force or the state's resources, your pursuit of eternal glory came at a very real, very present human cost. Paid by the suffering of your people, the environmental impact of these projects was also immense. Deforestation for timber, massive quarrying operations, and the rerouting of rivers for transport often devastated local ecosystems, affecting agricultural lands and further burdening the peasantry. This broader ecological cost, while not directly impacting you in the palace, was another consequence of your monumental obsession, adding to the silent suffering of your empire. So your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was consumed by the relentless, lifelong task of building for eternity. Your divine obsession with constructing colossal palaces, temples, and tombs for your own afterlife demanded an immense, perpetual labor force, extracted a horrifying human cost in physical toil, disease, and death, and placed an immense psychological burden on your shoulders. This pervasive, monumental ambition was a defining, profoundly sucked aspect of your job as a living god, ensuring that your reign was a constant, grueling, and ultimately tragic act of colossal creation, built on the invisible suffering of millions. Even as you, the emperor, grappled with the terrifying burdens of monumental construction and the relentless pressures of your vast bureaucracy, your divine body, though revered and seemingly pampered, remained tragically mortal. Forget perfect health or the limitless indulgences of a god, your unique and often contradictory lifestyle, coupled with the immense stress of your imperial duties, led to pervasive physical decay, marked by diet-related ailments, chronic pain, and a surprisingly short lifespan for a living god, making your rule profoundly sucked. Imagine your daily existence within the lavish imperial palace. While common Chinese peasants might struggle with scarcity and endure a monotonous diet, you, the emperor, had access to an unlimited array of rich, exotic foods from across your vast empire. Banquets were frequent, lavish affairs, often lasting for hours, laden with roasted meats, pork, fowl, beef, rare delicacies, sweet pastries made with honey and sugar, and copious amounts of fine wine or rice wine. This constant indulgence, while a symbol of your immense wealth and a means of political networking, often led to profound health issues, dietary imbalance, and excesses. Your diet, though abundant, was likely high in rich, fatty meats and complex carbohydrates, potentially lacking in sufficient fresh fruits and vegetables, especially those from outside the palace's carefully managed gardens. This constant indulgence, without a modern understanding of balanced nutrition, could lead to issues like obesity, which, even without modern understanding of its long-term effects, would put a strain on your joints and cardiovascular system. The sheer quantity of food consumed daily, often beyond satiety, put immense pressure on your digestive system. Severe dental problems analysis of imperial skeletal remains and historical accounts consistently reveals pervasive and often severe dental issues. Your diet, while rich, was likely high in natural sugars from fruits, honey, and various sweet confections, and, crucially, your rice and other grains would contain abrasive grit and tiny stone particles from primitive grinding methods as explored in The Terrible Daily Grind of a Silk Weaver. Chapter 5. This led to rampant tooth decay, severe wear, painful abscesses, and gum disease, causing chronic agony, difficulty eating, and systemic infections. Imagine suffering from a throbbing toothache for weeks, even as the most powerful man in the world. With no real relief beyond crude extractions or unproven herbal remedies, it truly sucked to have cavities as an emperor, digestive issues, the sheer quantity and richness of the food, combined with a relatively sedentary lifestyle compared to common laborers or soldiers, could lead to chronic indigestion, constipation, and other gastrointestinal problems, compounding your daily discomfort. The digestive system, constantly overloaded, would be a source of persistent internal misery. The practice of inbreeding within the imperial family to maintain the purity of the divine bloodline was a significant contributing factor to physical decay. Particularly in earlier dynasties, emperors often married close relatives' cousins, or even half-sisters, though less common in later dynasties than in Egypt. This practice, while culturally and dynastically significantly increased the risk of genetic disorders and congenital health problems, manifesting as various deformities, weaknesses, or chronic illnesses that would plague your life, physically compromising your divine image. Royal skeletal remains have often shown evidence of such inherited conditions, contributing to chronic pain or disabilities. It truly sucked to literally inherit your health problems from your parents' sacred choices. Constant stress was an inescapable companion, a silent killer that plagued your reign, the relentless burden of maintaining the mandate of heaven, the immense pressure to ensure prosperity famine, flood, led armies to victory, war, and conquest, manage the vast empire, navigate treacherous court politics ministers, eunuchs, harem, and deal with succession struggles, created a state of perpetual anxiety. Chronic stress severely impacts the immune system, cardiovascular health, and mental well-being, contributing to a range of physical ailments, from digestive disorders to heart strain, chronic fatigue, and heightened susceptibility to infectious diseases. You were under constant psychological siege, and your mortal body paid the ultimate price, slowly eroding under the immense, unyielding pressure of imperial rule. It truly sucked to literally stress yourself to death. The lack of effective medical knowledge and care exacerbated all these health issues. While emperors had access to the best physicians in the land, ancient Chinese medicine, despite its advancements in areas like herbal remedies, acupuncture, and pulse diagnosis, lacked a true understanding of microbiology, internal medicine in a modern sense, or the long-term effects of lifestyle choices. Treatments often involved complex herbal concoctions, some effective, many not, acupuncture, moxibustion, rudimentary surgical interventions, and reliance on spiritual or astrological interpretations of illness. This meant you suffered chronic ailments that would be easily managed today. Enduring immense pain and slow decline without true relief, it truly sucked to be a patient in ancient times. Even as an emperor, occupational hazards unique to being an emperor also contributed to your physical decay. Heavy regalia, the immense weight of imperial regalia, such as heavy jade crowns, elaborate dragon robes, and ceremonial armor, worn for hours during public audiences, rituals, and ceremonies, could cause chronic neck and back strain, contributing to musculoskeletal issues over decades. Toxic substances, alchemical pursuits. A particularly dangerous aspect of some emperors' lives was the pursuit of immortality elixirs, as we will explore in Chapter 8. These elixirs, often containing highly toxic substances like mercury, lead, and arsenic, were consumed by emperors in desperate attempts to prolong their lives or achieve immortality. This led to chronic poisoning, causing severe neurological damage, madness, organ failure, and often, ironically, Premature death. Many emperors who sought eternal life instead died agonizingly from the very medicine they consumed. It truly sucked to literally poison yourself in pursuit of eternal life. Sedentary lifestyle compared to common laborers or soldiers, your imperial lifestyle was relatively sedentary. While you might engage in hunting or riding, much of your time was spent in court, in ritual ceremonies, or overseeing administration from a static position. This sedentary lifestyle, combined with a rich diet, could lead to various ailments that a more active life might have prevented. Archaeological analysis of imperial skeletal remains, though not always perfectly preserved or easily accessible, and historical accounts from imperial physicians who kept meticulous medical diaries, like those from the Qing dynasty, provides chilling evidence of this physical decay. Studies have revealed emperors suffering from severe arthritis, spinal deformities, extensive dental decay, and abscesses, and evidence of arterial disease. Even rulers famed for their vitality and long reigns often showed signs of a body worn down by disease. Diet and stress, dying at ages that seem relatively young by modern standards. For instance, the Jiajing Emperor Ming Shizong, Jia Jingdi of the Ming Dynasty, notoriously obsessed with Taoist immortality elixirs, is believed to have suffered severe mercury poisoning, leading to his eccentric behavior and eventual death. The Qianlong Emperor Ganlong-di of the Qing Dynasty, despite living to over 80, suffered from numerous ailments including severe dental issues, often described in his imperial physician's detailed notes. Their physical remains and historical accounts offer a stark reminder of human vulnerability. Regardless of imperial status, the psychological toll of witnessing your own body slowly succumb to these ailments, knowing that your perfect divine image was subtly decaying, would be immense. You would suppress signs of pain or weakness in public, performing your sacred duties with unwavering composure, even as your body rebelled internally. This emotional repression, combined with the profound loneliness of your position, would add another layer of psychological suffering, ensuring that your path to immortality was paved with silent, agonizing physical decay. Your imperial majesty often concealed profound personal misery, living a life of hidden torment beneath the silken robes. The short lifespan of many ancient Chinese emperors, particularly during tumultuous periods, meant that they often succumbed to illness or the cumulative effects of their brutal job long before old age, even if not assassinated. The relentless physical decay brought on by imperial life often ensured a premature end, preventing them from enjoying the fruits of their absolute power for long. Your pursuit of lasting glory came at the cost of your own mortality, ensuring your reign was a constant race against time and your own body. This constant awareness of your own declining health, despite the best care money could buy, added a unique layer of stress and frustration to your absolute power. So, your life as an ancient Chinese emperor was profoundly sucked by pervasive physical decay. Your divine yet mortal body was plagued by diet-related ailments, chronic pain from excessive indulgences and immense stress, and unique occupational hazards like toxic alchemical pursuits. This relentless physical and psychological assault, often unchecked by primitive medicine, ensured that your reign was a constant battle against the slow, agonizing erosion of your very being, a grim testament to the heavy price of being a living god, destined for a difficult path even in death, even as your mortal body withered under the relentless assault of physical decay and chronic stress. Your ultimate purpose as emperor was to secure your eternal existence. Forget a simple, peaceful burial. Your ultimate fate involved an elaborate, often gruesome preparation for the afterlife, coupled with the terrifying prospect of historical damnatio memoriae, damnation of memory, ensuring that the price of your immortality was profoundly sucked. Imagine your final moments as a living emperor, perhaps weakened by illness, your life's immense burdens finally lifting. But even in death, your journey was far from over. It was just beginning, and it would be meticulously controlled. The very moment you took your last breath, a vast, complex, and highly specialized process would commence, transforming your perishable human body into an enduring vessel for the afterlife. This entire process was designed to ensure your successful journey to the divine, but it was anything but serene, and incredibly taxing on your remains. It truly sucked to have your body become a post-mortem project. The process of preparing an emperor's body for the afterlife was not standardized like Egyptian mummification, which occurred relatively soon after death. Instead, it was a complex blend of ancient Chinese funeral rites, sometimes involving preservation, and almost always focusing on the elaborate burial. Your body would be meticulously cared for, ritually washed, and dressed in layers of the finest silk robes, often embroidered with dragons and other imperial symbols. Precious jade and gold amulets, believed to offer protection and ensure immortality, might be placed on your body or in your mouth. Your greatest obsession, shared by many emperors, was the construction of your imperial mausoleum Diling. This wasn't merely a tomb. It was a vast subterranean complex, designed to be an eternal replica of your earthly palace and empire. The construction of these mausoleums began shortly after your ascension to the throne and continued throughout your reign, often for decades, consuming immense resources and human lives as explored in the terrible human cost of building the Great Wall of China. The scale was incomprehensible, vast underground chambers, elaborate palace structures, rivers of mercury, as in Qin Shi Huang's tomb, filled with mercury to simulate rivers and seas and immense treasures. You would be buried with precious treasures, gold, silver, jade, pearls, and countless priceless artifacts, ensuring your eternal wealth. Symbolic retinues, thousands of terracotta figures like the terracotta army for Qin Shi Huang, as explored in What Sucked About Being a Craftsman for the Terracotta Army, or later. More symbolic figurines of servants, soldiers, and animals to accompany you and provide eternal service. Real sacrifices. In some early dynasties, G, Shangzhou, and again, tragically, during certain Ming dynasty reigns, human sacrifices and Xunzang were practiced, where favored concubines, eunuchs, or retainers were compelled to accompany the deceased emperor to the afterlife, either by being buried alive or executed and interred. This horrifying practice, though not continuous throughout all dynasties, represents the ultimate price of imperial immortality, turning your death into a gruesome, final act of power over others. Imagine your own concubines, perhaps women you knew, being forced to die to serve you eternally. It truly sucked to have your eternal rest be built on literal human sacrifices. The goal of this elaborate preparation and burial was to ensure your successful transition to the afterlife and your continued influence as a ruler in the spirit world. Your tomb was designed to be a safe, opulent sanctuary, protecting your body and allowing your soul, Hunpo, to find peace and continue its cosmic journey. This was your ultimate legacy, your personal quest for immortality, a testament to your power and your adherence to ancestral reverence. However, even death offered no guarantee of peace or a secure legacy. For some emperors, a terrifying fate awaited historical damnatio memoriae faidi, deposed emperor, or a more severe form of historical effacement. This was a deliberate act of political and historical annihilation, designed to erase an emperor from the collective memory and deny their posthumous veneration. If you were deemed a tyrant, an illegitimate ruler, or a profound failure by your successors, your name could be systematically carved out of monuments and inscriptions. Your imperial titles and names would be chiseled away from stelae, temples, and official records. Statues defaced or destroyed, public statues of you would be pulled down, broken, or recarved. Official records, revised or suppressed imperial histories like the veritable records would be rewritten to vilify your character, exaggerate your flaws, and diminish your achievements, ensuring your legacy was one of shame and incompetence, denial of ancestral rights. In the most extreme cases, your ancestral tablet might be removed from the imperial ancestral temple, or your descendants might be forbidden from performing proper rites for you, effectively condemning your soul to wander restless in the afterlife without veneration. The ultimate spiritual punishment in Confucian belief. Imagine having lived as the son of heaven, only for your successors to try and literally erase your memory from time itself, condemning your soul to oblivion. This was the ultimate political weapon, a terrifying posthumous judgment that even absolute power could not entirely guard against. It truly sucked to be canceled by history, forever. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor as explored in Chapter 7 regarding his monumental obsession, ironically suffered a subtle form of damnatio memoriae by later dynasties. While his mausoleum was never explicitly defaced in the same way as, say, Roman emperors, his brutal rule was heavily criticized and often used as a negative example by subsequent Han Dynasty historians, ensuring his legacy was often portrayed as tyrannical and ultimately a cautionary tale. Despite his immense achievements, his son's short-lived dynasty and the subsequent peasant rebellions also contributed to the negative historical narrative. This historical fact, the vulnerability of even the most powerful emperors to posthumous vilification, looms large in Chinese history. One common misconception is that all ancient Chinese emperors automatically received continuous ancestral veneration after death. In reality, while the ideal was constant worship, the concept of damnatio memoriae, or various forms of deposed emperor status, meant that if an emperor was overthrown, deemed illegitimate, or his dynasty collapsed, his posthumous honors could be revoked, and his ancestral cult might be suppressed by a new regime. This was a powerful tool to legitimize new rulers and ensure that the previous, disgraced lineage held no spiritual or political sway. Historians still meticulously study Chinese dynastic histories, e.g., the veritable records, standard histories, imperial edicts, and philosophical discussions on legitimacy to understand the precise mechanisms and political motivations for posthumous vilification and the denial of ancestral rights, confirming the terrifying fragility of an emperor's legacy. Furthermore, the psychological toll on an emperor, living with the knowledge that his carefully constructed tomb could be robbed, his body desecrated, or his legacy erased by political rivals, would be immense. He would constantly strive to ensure his succession was stable, his policies wise, and his image unblemished, all to prevent the ultimate posthumous condemnation. This fear of being forgotten, of being condemned to eternal oblivion, permeated his daily life and influenced his reign's actions, adding a unique layer of stress to his pursuit of immortality. His existence was a constant battle against both his own mortality and the potential for historical annihilation. The act of human sacrifice, shunzang, when practiced, also had its own grim legacy. The spirits of those forced to die for the emperor were meant to serve him eternally, but they also represented a brutal exercise of power that later Confucian scholars often criticized as inhumane. Contributing to the debate over the emperor's virtue, this ethical stain on their reign, even if a part of ancient tradition, added a complex moral dimension to their pursuit of an elaborate afterlife. The very wealth of the tomb gold, jade. Mercury rivers made it an irresistible target for grave robbers, further threatening the emperor's peaceful rest. While elaborate traps and security measures were built as discussed for Qin Shi Huang's tomb, many imperial tombs were indeed plundered throughout history, their contents scattered, and their sacred purpose violated. This constant threat of desecration meant that even after spending decades building his eternal palace, the emperor's undisturbed rest was never truly guaranteed. Ensuring his pursuit of immortality was a constant battle against human greed and an ultimate, terrifying sense of posthumous vulnerability. So, your ultimate fate as an ancient Chinese emperor was profoundly sucked by the terrifying process of mummification or elaborate body preservation and burial, and the terrifying prospect of historical damnatio memoriae. Your body was gruesomely transformed into an eternal vessel, and your legacy constantly vulnerable to political erasure, capable of condemning your soul to oblivion. This relentless pursuit of immortality, both physical and historical, was a defining, profoundly miserable aspect of your job as a living god, ensuring that even in death, you found no true peace or guaranteed remembrance, only the chilling demands of your eternal state and the haunting threat of being forgotten forever. You've endured the divine burden of being transformed into a living god, suffered the suffocating regimen of ritual and robes, wrestled with the immense dynastic pressure to produce heirs, battled the insidious threats of palace intrigue, confronted the immense human and political cost of war and conquest, borne the terrifying responsibility for famine and plague, toiled relentlessly to build for eternity at immense human cost, grappled with the pervasive physical decay of your mortal body, and finally, endured the chilling process of mummification and faced the terrifying prospect of historical damnatio memoriae as the echoes of ancient ceremonies fade and the phantom scents of incense and embalming oils finally dissipate. A profound, lingering truth settles upon you. Being an Egyptian pharaoh was not a life of absolute power and effortless divinity. It was a profoundly disturbing and stressful job, a gilded cage where ultimate authority was inextricably linked with immense personal sacrifice, crushing responsibility, and constant anxiety, both in life and beyond the grave. Consider the unimaginable burdens of your divine status. From childhood, your individuality was systematically stripped away, replaced by the sacred persona of Horus. You were perpetually on stage, every action and word meticulously choreographed to uphold Ma'at, the cosmic order, the fate of your entire kingdom, its prosperity, the Nile's flood. Military victories was attributed directly to your divine favor, placing an immense, terrifying responsibility for natural phenomena utterly beyond your control. This constant pressure to be perfect, to be the living link between gods and men, was a profound psychological weight that never truly lifted. It truly sucked to literally be a god who carried the weight of the world. Then there's the relentless, oppressive demands of your royal duties. Your life was a ceaseless cycle of complex rituals, temple ceremonies, and administrative oversight. You were the supreme commander of vast armies, constantly facing external threats and internal rebellions, bearing the immense human and political cost of every campaign. Your personal life was a breeding ground for dynastic pressure and treacherous palace intrigue, where ambitious queens and consorts schemed, and the threat of assassination by poison or dagger was a constant, terrifying reality. Your gilded palace, a symbol of your power, was simultaneously a prison, riddled with spies and filled with paranoia. And what about the profound personal sacrifice and physical toll? You were denied the simple comforts of true privacy, genuine personal relationships, or a life free from relentless scrutiny. Your vow of purity often symbolized, even if not literally practiced for all pharaohs, your constrained diet. And your sedentary lifestyle contributed to unique health issues like severe dental problems and physical decay. The constant stress, the lack of true rest, and the pressure to suppress emotion all chipped away at your vitality, leading to a surprisingly short lifespan for many. A testament to the fact that even a living god was ultimately mortal and vulnerable. Finally, the chilling post-mortem demands and the fragility of your legacy, even in death. Your service continued. Your body underwent the gruesome, meticulous process of mummification, a physical transformation into an eternal vessel for your Ka and Ba, your tomb. A monumental testament to your ambition, was also a place where you continued to demand service, initially through horrifying human sacrifice in earlier dynasties, or later through thousands of Shabti figures. And despite all this, your eternal memory was never truly secure. The threat of damnatio memoriae, the systematic erasure of your name and image by vengeful successors, loomed large, capable of condemning your soul to eternal oblivion. Your entire existence, even beyond the grave, remained a profound performance and a precarious struggle for immortal recognition. It truly sucked to be erased from eternity. The very concept of the pharaoh, while representing unparalleled authority and spiritual power, was in practice a gilded cage, a life of constant, extreme pressure that few modern leaders could comprehend. Their daily existence was a testament to the immense psychological and physical burden of absolute power, tempered by the fragile realities of human mortality, unpredictable nature, and ruthless political ambition. The grandeur depicted in their monuments often masks the profound, unacknowledged misery of the individual who reigned, one particularly poignant and often overlooked. Detail is the pharaoh's direct responsibility for the morale and well-being of his soldiers and laborers, while they wielded immense power to compel vast workforces like those building temples or pyramids or to lead armies into battle. Their success depended on the productivity and loyalty of these masses. A pharaoh who failed to inspire, or whose reign led to excessive suffering, e.g., through famine or military defeat, could face rebellion or erosion of legitimacy. This meant that while they commanded brutally, they also had to engage in various forms of propaganda, public rituals, and sometimes even genuine acts of benevolence to maintain the consent or at least compliance of the governed. This constant balancing act between divine authority and human realities added a unique layer of stress to their job. Historians still meticulously study temple reliefs depicting pharaohs offering grain to the populace or personally inspecting monumental projects, debating whether these were purely propaganda or reflected genuine concern for their subjects' well-being in an attempt to maintain social order. Ultimately, your life as an Egyptian pharaoh was a profoundly disturbing and stressful job, Far removed from the romanticized image of serene omnipotence, it was a rigorous, relentless existence consumed by divine responsibilities, political peril, and immense personal sacrifice, all designed to ensure the continuity of a civilization. The ultimate power you wielded came at a profound, unyielding cost to your body, your mind, and your very soul, ensuring that even the living God knew the deep misery of an eternal burden. As you now drift into a deep, comforting sleep, let the distant murmurs of ancient rituals and the imagined weight of a double crown finally subside. You are safe in your own time, far removed from the chilling demands of absolute power and the relentless burdens of an ancient throne. May your dreams be peaceful, filled with the quiet certainty of personal autonomy, and the profound comfort of a life where your worth is measured not by divine decree, but by the simple joys of being human. A stark contrast to the disturbing and stressful truth we've explored tonight. And now, good night, and have sweet dreams.